I think what I'd like to start with is your art. And I thought it was a fascinating story about the picture that you were able to find still in Hungary and the way that you can remember yourself as a little girl being very interested in art. Can you tell us about that?
Well, I was in Hungary this past spring. It was a visit long overdue. I am not very anxious to go there. It is not a pleasurable visit, but there are people there I wish to see. I went to Debrecen, the city I was born in, and visited my uncle's widow. And we were in her apartment, which was my uncle's apartment. She said that we should go through all kinds of old materials, photographs, and find things that I would like to take with me back to America. And going through these things, we found a drawing I did when I was a little girl, 10 years old. And I was very touched because this was put away by my uncle very carefully in a transparent cover all these years. And there it was.
Can you show me?
Here it is. And it's signed and dated.
Were you encouraged in art as a little girl? It sounded that your family was very educated and very cultured.
Well, my family was a pretty well-educated family, but nobody was seriously interested in the fact that I liked to paint. I started drawing and painting when I was very young. I was only 6 years old. And that was the thing I really loved to do, and I spent a great deal of time at home drawing and painting. The only person who was very appreciative was my father, and he kept my drawing books and my little paintings and big paintings and set them aside, but nobody else paid any attention to it, because to be an artist, to be a painter, first of all, for a girl, it was really not taken seriously. But if I had been a boy, it would have been even more discouraged, because it was not a practical thing. And in my schooling, it was not encouraged, art education in these schools, which were pretty good schools. We went to private schools. Was like out of the Stone Age. We were made to copy Hungarian folk patterns exactly, hearts and leaves and motifs of this sort, and then paint them flat, carefully, red, blue, and yellow. And this was very uninteresting. Nevertheless, usually at the end of a session, we were asked to just paint and draw whatever we would like. And in these instances, I worked very hard, and I did everybody's painting in the class. All the girls came to me and asked me to, paint little scenes out of their lives. They enjoyed this very much.
How old were you when you painted that picture?
I was 10.
Do you feel that surviving the camps and coming to this country, do you feel that that experience, what happened to you and your family in the camps, strengthened your will to be an artist or to express yourself that way? Are the two linked at all?
Well, it is very hard to say. There was a time in my life, and I thought that they certainly were. They are linked because if our lives had not come to an end, if my family and the world in which I lived had not been destroyed, I would never have become an artist. So therefore, the fact that this tragedy did come about and that I managed to come through it, and then I was able to become an artist, is obviously the result of the tragedy, yes.
Now, most of your paintings don't deal with themes about the Holocaust, but your painting, that is in Yad Vashem certainly did. What did you want people to feel from that painting?
Well, to explain it to you, when I started seriously painting, when I was no longer a student, I attempted to remember and feel strongly those experiences which came about because of my incarceration in concentration camp and because of the loss of my family. I mean, I didn't express myself correctly. I did not have to attempt to remember this. I remember this, but what I attempted was to incorporate this experience into my work. And it was not a successful thing. I couldn't really do it. And very, very few things came out of it, which I even kept. Then later on, as I was thinking about it, I realized that my work comes out of my being, very deep from me, and from my personality, which has nothing to do with the Holocaust. I am a person who was made much before that. It comes out of what I was before the Holocaust. It comes out of being a visual person and being a person who wishes to express herself through visual things, mainly painting, and also through my love of life and love of nature. When I paint from a sense of well-being and from a sense of all the things in the world I love. Nature and balance and peace and a glowing thing that life is when you look at that, and not anything negative. This is the painting that is now in Yad Vashem. Actually, it is not a painting, it is a pen and ink drawing with washes. This copy is not true to the color of the drawing.
I'd like to, when I was here the other day, I felt that you were better than any other person I've talked to, able to express what the real loss of family and culture was, because you remembered so much and could talk in so many good ways about your family and the way things were before the Holocaust. And in some ways, I think that's more important than the specific incidences of atrocities that happened in camp, was the real destruction of the people and the culture and the families. Can you tell us about what your life was like, your family, before the camps?
You know, when it all came to an end, I was only 19 years old, and I came from a background where I lived a very protected, unreal existence in this burning Europe, in this terrible conflagration. I lived like a person in an ivory tower, and then, you know, from one day to the next, all this happened and everything was destroyed. Well, I come from a family where I was treasured, loved, and where the individuals of this family were, I think, very interesting people. With a great deal of imagination and style, and also kindness. I had a very good life. I don't know what else to say about it. There were so many things we as a family did together which were extremely pleasurable. We enjoyed being together. My mother's sisters were a great inspiration to me.
What happened to your family then as things started happening?
They didn't start happening. The Germans came in and everything happened instantly. You know, it wasn't something like in Poland or France or in the other countries. Here we were in Hungary, all throughout the war, living an almost perfectly normal existence. And on the 19th of March 1944, the Germans came into the country, they took over, a fascist government came to power, and in just a few months, it was all over for the Jewish people. It was just like that.
And you told me that you saw your mother age very quickly, that she seemed to age almost overnight.
Yes.
What happened to them emotionally?
Well, she apparently understood that everything was over and she gave up. She gave up. All life was gone from her. She was only 54 years old. There was no fight in her, none whatever.
How about your father?
Same thing, more or less. They just didn't know how to stand up to these events. On this trip back to Hungary, I met a man who is now in his 70s. He was at that time a young man married, whose wife was expecting, and they had 2 little girls. And he managed so that they all survived. They all split. The little girls were with some people with false documents. He was hiding. He secured his wife, his pregnant wife, left her. I mean, he didn't leave her, they left each other. Other documents, they scattered. They knew what to do. They fought. They all survived. And they were right. It was wonderful of them to be able to do that. But my family wasn't like that at all.
Your family stuck together?
Yes.
Can you tell us what happened when your family was taken to the camp?
When we arrived to Auschwitz, my whole family was killed, and I was selected to live. That's what happened.
When you were that age, how did you make sense coming from the family and the culture you had of what had happened?
You mean right in the camp I made sense of it, or afterwards?
No, while you were in the camp and right before you were sent to the camp, as you realized what was going to...
No, I didn't know before what was going to happen. I didn't make any sense of it. I am afraid that I don't know how to pick up your question and how to elaborate on it.
No,
because
that's fine.
I just didn't make any sense of it.
Did it make any sense to you why the Jewish people were being singled out?
No, it didn't make any sense to me. Does it make any sense to you?
How do you look at it now?
Well, it still doesn't make any sense naturally. But historically speaking, when you study the history of Western civilization and you see the Jewish people in the diaspora after the destruction of the Second Temple, then history shows you that Jews were persecuted by the Christian world from the very beginning.
How did you survive?
Series of accidents, coincidences. First of all, when I was selected to live when we arrived, I was pulled out of a line of 5 and selected to live, while the others in that line were sent to die. And then when I was in the camp, all kinds of little things kept on happening, which made it possible for me to live. For instance, in Auschwitz, in the camp in which I was, there were many contagious diseases among the concentration camp inmates, and scarlet fever broke out. People were taken to die who contracted this disease, and just 3 days before I came down with scarlet fever, for some strange reason, a barrack was established off the campgrounds where they put people with contagious diseases. I got sick, they put me into that barrack. I was there for 6 weeks. All hell broke loose in there. Finally, we were booted out. And then later on, when I was in Bergen-Belsen, I met a woman I was within that barrack, and she told me that after we were put out of the barrack, just about 3 weeks later, the whole thing was taken to the gas chamber. So I was in the period when it was possible for somebody with scarlet fever to survive in Auschwitz. Then I was in Bergen-Belsen from the end of September until the beginning of December, and I was taken away just before all hell broke loose in Bergen-Belsen. People started coming down with typhoid fever, and there was no food, etc., etc., etc. Most likely, if I had been left there, I would have died. And then, at the end, I was very thin, and I don't think I would have lasted much longer if the war didn't end when it did. Also, the factory in which we worked was bombed many times, and many people died, and I didn't.
Was there a time that you remember deciding that you were going to, was that ever a mental process, a psychological process of deciding that you were going to not give up? Not like that. Not like that. There was a time when I gave up. It was the time when I finally learned that my family was killed. You see, I didn't know in Auschwitz that my family was killed. And in Bergen-Belsen I learned that they were killed, and that I will never see any of them again. I was all alone in the world. And then I did not want to leave. But again, accidentally, things kept on happening. I met people who were of very positive and calming effect upon me. And my inner position changed, my mental and emotional position changed, and again I wanted to live, but it wasn't something I decided. As you look back now, 40 years later, what did you lose? I mean, if you can tell us as you look back about the life that you had to make for yourself coming to this country without a family, the loss of everything that you had known as a child, how would you sum that up to somebody, what the loss was for you?
I lost everything. Everything. When I came out of the camp, I had nothing. I had no one, and I had no material goods. I had nothing but the skin that covered me, and I had to make a completely new life for myself. Completely new. And I was very fortunate that I was able to come to the United States and make a new life for myself.